Welcome to the Care Right podcast, your go-to resource for all things elder care. Guiding us through this journey is Annalee Kruger, the founder of Care Right Incorporated, and she has been steadfastly supporting families across the United States. Each episode brings you expert insights, innovative strategies, and practical advice, ensuring that you're well equipped to provide the best possible care for your loved ones. Expect to gain valuable knowledge, learn from real-life stories, and get inspired to take action in your own caregiving journey. So buckle up as we dive into an in-depth discussion of elder care planning and together embrace the journey of caring for aging loved ones on the Care Right podcast.
Hello, everyone. I am Annalee Kruger, the owner of Care Right Incorporated. We work with family caregivers all across the globe in developing a customized aging plan, or most often crisis management plan. For families all across the globe. Families rarely live down the street from each other like they did 30 years ago when I first started working with families and caregivers and seniors and helping them sort out their care options, living arrangement options, family dynamics, and all of those good things. As families started moving away from each other, the needs of their parents did not decrease. It's just that now families are like, oh my goodness, mom is losing weight, or she's showing some memory impairment, or she's been in the hospital. All of those kind of red flags are triggers that things are not going well. And we need to be putting a plan in place. Just like you work with a financial advisor or an estate planner to put a plan in place, we do aging planning. And we facilitate family meetings. We use technology. I've been working with families over initially Skype and now Zoom since 2011, so that we can facilitate the family meetings. It's hard to expect, or it's impossible to expect families to develop their own aging plan or facilitate their own family meetings if they don't understand the landscape of senior care, or they don't understand dementia, or they think that Medicare is going to pay for everything. You can't make smart decisions off of wrong information, right? We also know that caregiving without an aging plan will derail your careers, your finances, your relationships, your marriages, and your own emotional and physical health and financial well-being. So when you have an aging plan, it solves for all of those issues. So, as you know, if you've listened to our Caregiver Crisis podcast before, I always get super awesome guests on my podcast here, and Rhonda is one of those guests. So Rhonda, why don't you introduce yourself and just share a bit about what you do, and we'll talk about caregiving and how that affects relationships or marriages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I remember right early on when we were both starting our businesses, we always said, like, there's some parallels in what we're doing, right? Because you're doing the strategy and the planning for the caregiving side, and I'm doing the strategy and the planning for the divorce side. And there's just been a lot of kind of overlap in a sense of how we approach things. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to share. So I started my company back in 2014. And prior to that, I had been in the financial industry in a more traditional kind of financial advisory role, but left in 2014 to be able to open up Women's Financial Wellness Center with the intention, focus, and goal to be able to serve women not only across the country, but really all over the world, help them navigate through the financial challenges related to divorce. And, it's been fun to watch you and your business grow. And I know my business has grown. We thought, when we both started, we thought, gosh, there's plenty of business in Wisconsin. And there is. And yet it's not, these issues that we're going to be talking about today cross state lines, cross international lines, right? So I have the privilege today to be able to not only have my own podcast as well called Disrupting Divorce, Conversations for Women, but being a consultant and an advocate, particularly for women that are contemplating or going through divorce. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. I'm a certified financial education instructor and also a financial coach, which is really working on the attitudes and beliefs about money, and having some of the conversations about, legacy and what kind of a legacy that they want to be able to live, which I think is a good segue, for your conversation and my conversation today.
Mm-hmm. Good. So what kinds of, we know, because all of my clients who come to us at Care Right they're already overwhelmed, caregivers, they're burned out. Like I said, the role of caregiving has absolutely affected their finances, their careers, their marriages, their relationships all across the board, whether it's with their siblings and for sure with the care recipient, and also relationships at home. And the wives or the husbands that I talk to, because they're all kind of in the same boat. Their situation is unique to them, but they're all kind of in the same predicament where caregiving has gotten out of control. And now the spouse doesn't have the emotional presence or the physical presence, or they're always distracted at home when their husband or wife is trying to, get reacquainted with them. Sometimes the primary caregiver just doesn't have enough energy to go around for everybody that wants a piece of that. So I see this literally every single day with how caregiving has negatively impacted relationships and the emotional and physical well-being of the primary caregiver. How are you seeing this very same thing in your line of work?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a major and a minor, right? So because people are coming to me because they are contemplating or going through divorce, the caregiving piece is not always forefront, right, of our conversations. However, it's a little more subtle. It's, hey, Rhonda, I have a special needs child who now is over 18 and is falling outside of, in some states, the guidelines of the court's jurisdiction over support, financial or otherwise, right? Each state's a little different on what that number is, that age out is, but that's an example. Or, hey, I'm dealing with my aging parent and they're living with me. And so now I have my parent living with me and I'm trying to navigate through the divorce process and how I can manage the financials on my own. And yet, the courts are not going to care if you're taking care of your aging parent. There's going to be no sympathy or support from your soon to be ex, right? To help you with that. So I feel like how I'm seeing it is it's one of the many additional things that are burdening them as they're already going through one of the most difficult things, right? Divorces, of course, as we know, at the top of the Holmes Race scale as far as stressors, and health is the other one, right? So health, divorce, death, all the things, right?
Yep.
And so that's really how I see it. It's more of a underlying concern, but not always directly in the forefront.
Yeah. Or maybe something to think about if you're not already doing it, because I train a lot of financial advisors about starting to ask the right questions to their clients is, are you a family, just asking them, are you a family caregiver? Is there anything affecting your personal well-being? And if they're a caregiver, then that absolutely will come up. So that way, if you're probably like a holistic planner, it's like, okay, here's resources for this, and this issue. And then you build out that plan of, okay, we're going to tackle this first, but we also know the importance of doing this, and this to make sure that the clients that you work with, have all of their kind of problems solved, so to speak, under one roof, which is you, because you're kind of that concierge model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
No, absolutely. And in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like, this piece of it, depending on where they're at with the situation, part of the conversation that I'm having with my clients is, the estate planning component, right? Like, okay, what is your estate plan? But again, that overflows into other areas of their life as well. So I think it's identifying what the concerns are, what the immediate issues are, and helping them navigate through that. But it is certainly something that I think is definitely a good part of the conversation. It's just a matter of when do we address what.
Right. Yep. Yep. And guiding them through those conversations, because sometimes they don't know because they're so overwhelmed, right? Like their frontal cortex is so overwhelmed with all of the stress. Because when they're coming to you, they're not coming because things are going well. Just like when they come to me, no one ever calls me because they're like, Anna Lee, I read your book and how cool is that? Or heard you on a podcast or a speaking engagement. No one calls because things are
No,
going well and they think
no,
it's a cool person to hang out with. It's like
right.
things have gone awry badly.
Yeah.
And so just like with you, you're trying to help them be as successful as they can in whatever predicament that they're in. So let's talk about a couple of these points that you wanted to bring up too. And we've kind of touched on some of these already, is what toll have you seen caregiving on marriages? One of the things that I see is that maybe the daughter-in-law is taking care of the now soon to be ex-in-laws, and she kind of got thrust into that role, and she didn't like her in-laws in the first place, and now she's finding herself having to take them to doctor's appointments and like take off
Yeah.
work to take care of people that they may not have liked in the first place. So are you seeing those types of situations as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the issues for people that are going through divorce is, taking a look at what income they're going to have coming in after the divorce is over. And, there certainly is a gap in income, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially if they've been out of the workforce. And so a lot of times I have seen where my clients are like, okay, yes, I'm taking care of our kids and I've been helping take care of family members. Sometimes it is their parents or their soon to be ex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ex-in-laws, where they're the caregiver role all the way around. And yet nobody's putting a dollar value on what they're bringing to the table, as well as the emotional, like we were talking about, the emotional toll that
Mm-hmm.
it's taking. And then a lot of times these women are expected to jump back into the workforce, even though there's been decades, potentially decades, right, of
Right.
them
Yep.
being out of the workforce. So it's really heavy. And it is having a practical impact on, I think, the livelihood of women after the divorce is over.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Um, what are some tips for people who are going through divorce and caring for aging parents?
Well, I think the obvious one, right, is self-care, which it's like, what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it means asking for help. Sometimes it means enlisting the people that can help you kind of carve out time to address the things that you need to be addressed and coming up with a plan. One of the baselines that I will tell my clients, and I think it applies to this situation as well, is what are the expenses and what's the income? And I always say, yeah, the budgeting, it's not sexy or glamorous, but we need a baseline. What are we working with? And then, what are some of those expenses that are going to be there that we might need to address? And I think that's a really good starting spot for people, even though it's not necessarily fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really important part of the conversation. And, people can be keeping that in mind as they're going into the negotiations for the divorce, to say, listen, I'm going to be caring. And I just had this situation recently with a client in Colorado. I'm going to be dealing with my aging parent. She's been, my mom's been living with us. I need to figure out, am I keeping the house, or are we moving to an apartment or somewhere else? And if so, how does that play into the negotiations? Because maybe she's willing to take a little bit more in exchange for something else, so that she can continue to care for her mom and her special needs adult child.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where, again, it's subtle. From my perspective, it's subtle, but very important.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just having the conversations, we can't, we have to be realistic, I guess, and say, we don't get, none of us get healthier as we age. So if you have aging parents, we know that they're not going to get more mobile, they're not going to get more cognizant, they're not going to get more independent as they age. So most of us, 58% of us adult kids, will get thrust into the role of family caregiving. But wouldn't it be better if we had the family meetings and talked about the what whens of aging first, so that we could maybe offset some of these divorces or, negative impacts on marriages and relationships and health issues in general. So just like, we spend our whole life planning for something, college or getting married or vacations. It just makes sense that if you have aging parents or a special needs child, we have to put a plan in place for everybody's safety and well-being and making informed decisions. And like with your services as well, you're helping them navigate a really, really tough situation that they never wanted in the first place, right? Like we don't get married to be like, oh yeah, when are we going to get divorced, right? Like
Right.
that's not our intention, but sometimes that just happens, right? So yeah, there's definitely an intersection of how caregiving affects marriages, relationships, and just the well-being of everyone in the family in general. And I know when people are always like, self-care is such a buzzword. People say
It
that
is.
all of the time, and it's like, well, what does self-care mean to you? Because it might mean something different to me. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I ask my clients, when's the last time you went to your book club, or what's missing in your life? Or when's the last time you got to go to the salon or the spa or whatever it is that makes you kind of you? And then we put that strategy in place through, a self-care plan, which is part of our aging plan in place, right? Um, what financial considerations do you think people should probably think about? And maybe we already touched on that a little bit with the divorce and things to have to consider if someone's going to relocate or get a different house, and they're also taking care of elderly loved ones. Are there any other financial considerations that you can think of that maybe we didn't already touch on?
The only other thing that I can think of is there are times where I have seen, so my clients, let's just say their parent is living with them, right? There are times when the parent who's living there wants to be able to contribute. Sometimes they're not able to. But if they are and they say, hey, listen, I want to be able to give you a little something each month for rent or to contribute to food or whatever, that certainly can be part as we're looking at, what are the gaps in income? It might be, well, where's the money going to come from for you to be able to continue to move forward now that you're going through and going to be on the other side of divorce? It might be, it might be getting a part-time job. It might be getting a full-time job. It might be having, somebody rent, right, as part of that. So we're always looking at what's the gap and what are some creative ways that we could use to be able to help offset that monthly expense. And so that's just kind of a little creative way that I have seen. Again, not everybody is always in the position to be able to do that, but there are times when it just helps the person who is doing the caregiving continue to maintain to do that from a financial perspective.
Yep. And from an aging plan perspective, just because again, I work with families who have often, kind of, I wouldn't say put a plan in place, because it's mostly like uh crisis, where they think that they're putting a plan together, but it might not always be the most well thought out plan, because they don't know what they don't know. They're in uncharted territory. So one of the things that affects marriages and relationships, because again, these families are coming to us in total crisis mode, unfortunately. So but when parents live with their adult kids, that can be an absolute relationship impactor, because even the most loving, attentive,
Yep.
supportive spouse could be like, yeah, sure, your mom can move in with us, but you don't know what you're getting into. And then I call it the caregiver snowball, where it's like, okay, now mom's needs exceed what we can personally do, or our house isn't senior safe,
Right.
or
Right.
mom's dementia obviously progresses and now she's walking into your bedroom at
That's
3
right.
o'clock in the morning, or she's falling, or she's incontinent and now your house looks and smells like a nursing home, or she has a pet and you guys don't like the pet because it bites or
Right.
whatever. Or you just don't have the marital privacy.
Right.
Okay, well, she's next door, we can't like in the room
Right.
next door, we can't like do what we would normally want to do. And so, but a lot of families make this decision of, well, we'll just move, it'll be easier in quotes if we just move mom or dad in with us. And then they find out, okay, we are in over our head, or we thought our siblings would help out and they aren't. Like 85% of our,
Right.
I do family mediation with them, and most of it is because of this whole living together thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you've
It's a
got to
boundary
talk about
issue,
it.
right?
It
I mean, it's a
absolutely is.
boundary issue. I mean,
Yep.
being fully transparent, I have said, like, my mother-in-law is never living with us, ever.
This is going to go out to the whole wide world, right? Okay.
Just not happening, right? I mean, we got to set those boundaries. And I think it's difficult sometimes to do that because we feel guilty or shameful or whatever. But again, I think it starts in a lot of these situations, right, with having the conversation, pulling in the right people, and just saying, listen, I want to make sure that this individual gets great care.
Mhm.
I'm not the one to do it,
Right.
right? And so, it's what am I willing to do and what am I able to do? And we have to be able to answer both of those questions effectively to give an answer. It's not, hey, I'm willing to, but I'm not able to, or hey, I'm able to, but I'm not willing. It has to be, yes, I'm able and yes, I'm willing in order, in my opinion. And it's a good litmus test for people, right? And then also say, okay, if we start down this path, what's the contingency plan if this goes sideways?
Right.
Right?
Yep. Yep. And that's what we do with our families is what's the exit strategy? And we try to catch the families before they make all of these big
Yeah.
decisions because guilt is a heavy, heavy thing. And a lot of people are living with aging parents and they're like, how can I unravel myself without feeling like a total jerk? Right. Or like I'm letting them down. And
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like, if we can catch these families proactively when they first start seeing things that are going awry with aging parents, we can actually, everyone in the whole family can have a much better outcome when they have an aging plan. And just like with you, the divorce plan, you've got it all
Yep.
strategized out for them so that it makes a awful situation a bit less awful,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anything else in closing? Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you think would be helpful?
I just think it's one of those things. The final thing that kind of came to my mind, Annalie, is I mean, and I know this is something you do, but we just need to be willing to have the tough conversations. We just need to have the tough conversations and we need to not wait till something bad happens, right, before we take action. And I think that's, I guess, the baseline, right? The heart behind what you and I are doing is, and again, can we help people in crisis? Yes, but man, it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Yeah, you know, when you choose, like when we do family meetings, the family meeting, the tone and the energy in the family meeting of a family who's proactive, where they're just starting to see changes with mom and dad, and they're like, hey, we made it through this crisis or this hospital stay or this fall, but it made us really realize how ill prepared we are. We don't even have our estate documents in order. I didn't know accounts and passwords, and I had to make decisions for you because you were recovering from a stroke or whatever. Or where are mom and dad going to live if they can't stay at home? And it's like we need to, we plan for everything else in life. Why wouldn't we plan for our aging years or the years that we most likely as adult kids will end up thrust in the role of family caregiving? It's going to happen whether you're prepared for it or not.
Hmm.
So doesn't it make sense to put a plan in place instead of being willy-nilly? You'll always have options, just like your clients. You'll always have options when they come to you. They're just not going to be the best ones when
Yeah.
they've waited so long to decide to work with a professional. And it is an investment, but it's more of a loss if you don't work with a professional that can help you navigate all of the intricacies of the work that you
Yeah.
do, the work that I do. That's why we do what we do, because our services overlap to help make sure that as family members, they have all the resources that they need, so that they can put an actual value add productive plan in place instead of always knee-jerk reactions and wondering why things didn't go well.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
you work with families all across the country just like I do, so there's no like state by state boundary, because all of the things that you do with your families are just like the things that we do with our families. It doesn't matter where you live, where you are in your journey. I'm sure do you do a free consult as well, just to
I
see if it's the
do.
right fit?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, and again, I think we've done that for a long time and love to be able to just have those conversations and see kind of where people are at, how we might be able to help them.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
yeah.
and Rhonda's she's a force to reckon with, because you've done TED Talks. You wrote a book too, I believe. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What is your book?
So my book is called Bold Beginnings. I think it's going to be the one of many with kind of this bold fill in the blank. But it really, it was intended to be simple and yet impactful. So it takes the word confidence and breaks each of the letters down because I love acronyms. And one of the things that we talk about in there is the legacy planning and how is it that they want to leave a legacy and what does that look like? And again, I know the intention was for it to be simple because right? Everybody's going through so much stress. I'm like, they don't need a 300-page book on my, dissertation and my life story. What they need is a little bit of story and some practical. And so, hence Bold Beginnings.
Excellent. And where can they get that book?
So I will include the link here. We are launching the book in September of 2024. So they can pre-order the book. We're working on the final stages of that, but I will make sure that I get the link to put in the show notes.
Okay, cool. All right. Very good. Well, we are nearing the end of our time together here. I just want to say, Rhonda, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We've actually known each other, gosh. Well, I started CareWrite in 2011. So because I think you were probably one of the first, that was still when you were doing like financial planning with global view or global wealth or something. So you've known each other a long time. So Rhonda is in my network for curated professionals. So when I've got families that are going through the question of divorce or ending relationships, we've got each other to leverage for our families that we work with. So you're never alone. I think that's just the really important thing is wherever you are in whatever journey or crisis that you're in, you're never alone. There's always a resource. And hopefully you see the value in Rhonda's work and my work as well. So thank you so much, Rhonda. You're just an old pro at all these podcasts. It's second nature, isn't it?
Oh, it's fun. No, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share on a really important topic today. I appreciate it.
Yep, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, Rhonda.
Thank you for tuning into the CareWrite podcast. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with others who might find it helpful. Remember, CareWrite is more than just a podcast. It's a community dedicated to supporting family caregivers with comprehensive care planning, crisis management, and resources for every stage of aging. Stay connected with us for future episodes as we continue to explore essential topics in aging planning, elder care, and financial planning. Until next time, take care, plan wisely, and remember, you're not alone in your caregiving journey.